I just wanted to add a further thought to yesterday's talk, if I may, something I've been mulling over this morning, and that's this. When we look at Paul's relation to the so-called historical Jesus, the one thing we have to remember that's really crucial here, or actually there's a number of things you want to keep in mind. One, this pattern, this didache that we've talked about in any number of talks, the importance of this life of Jesus as an ethical model, as a way of relating, okay? That's very important. Number two, mimetic theory is obviously very important. But number three, as I was thinking this morning in terms of Paul and Jesus, what occurred to me is that Jesus lived this model of peace, reconciliation, forgiveness, this whole model as an imitation of his Father, so that this Father could come into religion where there's only Janus-faced gods and show the character of the Father through the character of the Son. When Jesus is on earth, he is that character. The disciples, however, are missing something essential that Paul will talk about because it doesn't happen during their experience with Jesus. Paul talks about the indwelling of the Spirit. And what happens in the indwelling of the Spirit is that the Father who's revealed in the Son now dwells with us. And I'm going to use the term personally rather than individually. Personally and corporately, when we choose to gather together in his name, dwells in us by the Spirit or as the Spirit. And so this very same character is being formed in us as persons in relationship, interdividual, and corporately when we choose to gather together in his name. This is what Paul had. This was his experience. It was post-Pentecost. Jesus could come and indwell us, that is, be part of this whole mental sphere thing that we have going on up here in our brain, including our emotions, because thoughts are emotions and emotions are thoughts. Don't think that they're really that different. Just because Descartes separated them, I believe it was Di Tommasio demonstrated, we don't have to do that. Our worldviews, the way we think, how we think, what we think, all the radio in our head, I mean, it gets constant in there, isn't it? It's just talk, 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 think. It's what it does, right? And you just get carried along in these streams. But with this new pattern of life, all of that changes. The singular focus on Jesus and his character takes us straight to the heart of the Father. It is precisely this. It is this ethical reality that we are changing the way we think, the way we relate. We're changing, all of that is changing, transforming into his image. This is what Paul's arguing in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. All of this takes place because the Father has sent his Spirit through Jesus to dwell in us. And that's why the Spirit can only bear witness to Jesus and none other. And Jesus bears witness to the Father and none other. And the Father bears witness to the Son, and the Son bears witness to the Spirit. And when we have those three witnesses, we know that we are being changed, that we are being transformed, that we are recognizing that life that's not lived in full forgiveness of everyone, everywhere, the past, the present, the future, is not an eschatological life. It has nothing to do with eschatology and everything to do with the old age if we're still not forgiving everyone, everything. That is how the Father has reconciled the cosmos in himself. The whole broken reality the Father has taken into himself and is transforming it. Now, just as the Father comes in to break religion, that is our theological thinking, that's what's happening with Jesus. The outgrowth of religion are the pillars of culture: prohibition, ritual, and myth. And it is the gospel message that is out there undermining these pillars. And it has been doing this for 2,000 years. And in the 20th century, we finally became aware of the voice from below. It's only been the last 60, 70 years this has been true. In our whole human species of several million years, it's only been this little flicker of time that we've come to this awareness that this is how we've created ourselves. We've socialized ourselves. We govern ourselves. And that's the influence of the gospel, just breaking down these pillars of culture so that these things are seen. And our ability to use scapegoats is becoming more and more apparent to be something that is no longer working. Now, there is for Paul an awareness that the body in the world, the church, is what he calls the church, this gathering of believers intentionally to live out this ethical pattern with one another in his name. They choose this. When this occurs, revelation takes place. Okay? The church is the people who now enter human culture to show human culture a completely different way to be social. That is, to be human, to be in relationship. We are bringing a different pattern to culture by the Spirit. Do you see this? However, our gospel has been corrupted. We know this right from the get-go. We have seen example after example, both from the Jewish scriptures as well as the apostolic scriptures. We've seen this throughout church history, especially in the 2nd century, the 3rd century, the 4th century. I mean, it's a funny thing how people want to go back to the early church as though this was somehow a purer form without centuries of barnacle incrustation. And that's just not the case. You can go back to the beginning, to Jerusalem Christianity. And if you stay there, you're stuck with James and Peter and the rest of the of that crowd. I mean, look, this business of trying to get back to the beginning is useless. What rather ought to be happening is that we ought to recognize how there's this fundamental pattern of life, of relating, that is not mimetic. And it's expressed very, very clearly throughout the New Testament. The greatest example of this is the Philippians hymn, chapter 2, 5 through 11, where Jesus, who though being in the form of God, morphe theou, chose, right, let me quote the hymn rather, who being in the form of God did not consider equality with God, now listen to the translation, to consist in the act of grasping. And for you Greek people, C.F.D. Moll has a fantastic article on harpagmos here. So you might want to reference that. He did not consider equality with God to consist in the act of grasping, to be mimetic, to want to be God. That is not, even though he was in the form of God, he did not choose that. He did not take it. He did not, that wasn't it. No, rather, he became found in form of a human, a man who goes on to die a cross death. This is the non-mimetic reality that we are to live with one another. When we gather together in his name, we should never be taking from the other, ever. The community of true faithful ones, the pistoi, the hoi pistoi, this community is a giving community. Now, in my lifetime, the beginning of my ecclesial experience in Church in the Park and the Jesus Movement in Modesto, California, there was that for a little short season. And at the end of my life, I really did see this kind of reality in the Mennonite tradition. But sadly, both of those don't have the gospel to go with it. They're living this pattern. The Mennonites are living this pattern out in some ways. They're doing a reasonably good job of it too, but they don't have any ability to connect it back to the Father or the doctrine of the Trinity. There's a disconnect. But at any rate, Paul understood that what took place in Jesus' ministry was for Israel. It was for the people of God, from Abraham to Caiaphas. It was for the people of God. This was his ministry. However, the way he lived and what he accomplished in this ministry was not a second temple eschatology, a bringing in of a reign of God where Gentiles are destroyed. That didn't happen. Paul didn't understand this for the first 8 years of his ministry, or 9 years, or 10 years. He's converted in 34. He writes Thessalonians in 41. Wow, that's a long time. But there is a break in Paul. And there is a fundamental recognition that this second temple approach to Jesus, this slotting Jesus into categories that are found in his culture. Who do people say I am? Some say you're this, some say you're this, some say you're that. And who do you say? We think you're the Davidic warrior Messiah. And he has to tell them, shut up. You just don't know what you're talking about. And when Peter refuses that kind of retort from Jesus, he replies that Jesus has just gone all liberal on it. And Jesus has to say, you're a Satan. You're a stumbling block. What you want from me, I can't deliver. That's not who my Father is. I can only do what I see my Father doing. I can only say what I hear my Father saying. They didn't have the Spirit dwelling within them. They had the model in front of them. They could observe, they could listen, they could learn, they could argue, they could do all of that. But they didn't have the Spirit dwelling within, reframing and changing and transforming all of this. And that's what we have. And that's why the Spirit is the down payment of our inheritance, the arabon of Ephesians chapter 1. That's what makes the gift of the Spirit to us so precious. And the power of the Spirit is found in the transformation of the way we think, how we think, and then what we think. You can't change what you think until you change how you think, until you recognize that you have accumulated so many presuppositions and assumptions in your world. So many. And all the Spirit's doing is getting rid of all that and putting in a new base. And that new base, presupposition number one, is that God is revealed in the cross of Jesus Christ. So as we transition to the fourth gospel this week, and we look at the fourth gospel, we're going to really see pretty clearly that both the writer of the fourth gospel and Paul have the same understanding of the relationship to the historical Jesus and the point of having the Spirit as a community. So just some thoughts for this morning as I was reflecting back on yesterday's talk. Cheers.